A pickup truck slows to a stop on a quiet country road. Henry Sullivan, wearing a worn baseball cap and flannel shirt, peers through his windshield at a car with its hazards on. A woman with silver hair stands beside it, looking at a flat tire. Henry parks behind her car and steps out, carrying his toolbox. Something about her seems familiar, the way she stands, how she tucks her hair behind her ear. As he gets closer, his steps slow. The woman turns, and time seems to stop. He knows those eyes. He's dreamed about them for 50 years. The autumn breeze carries the scent of fallen leaves as Henry approaches her car. His worn toolbox, a faithful companion through countless roadside assists, swings gently in his grip. The woman brushes a strand of silver hair behind her ear, and the afternoon sun catches something familiar. A simple pearl earring, classic and elegant, just like the ones from that spring dance in 1965. "Looks like you could use a hand," Henry says, his voice steadier than his heartbeat. She turns fully toward him now, and the years between then and now seem to blur. Elizabeth Porter, though surely she has a different last name now. Her eyes widen slightly, that same subtle expression he remembers from their first meeting in high school chemistry class. "I appreciate it," she says, her voice carrying the same gentle lilt that used to make his teenage heart skip. "The spare's in the trunk, but I'm afraid these old hands aren't quite as cooperative as they used to be." Henry sets down his toolbox, trying to maintain his composure. "Some things get better with age," he manages, though car trouble isn't one of them. The familiar ritual of helping a stranded motorist gives him something to focus on besides the thundering in his chest. Elizabeth watches as he opens her trunk, her hands unconsciously moving to touch her pearl earring, a gesture he remembers so well. "You always were good with mechanical things, Henry." The sound of his name in her voice nearly makes him drop the jack. So she remembers too, of course she does. How could either of them forget? "These pearls," he says, nodding toward her earrings as he positions the jack. "They remind me of prom night," they say simultaneously, and share a laugh that breaks through 50 years of silence. "Mom got them for me that afternoon," Elizabeth recalls, her voice soft with memory. "Said every girl needs real pearls for her first prom." Henry focuses on loosening the lug nuts, grateful for the excuse to hide his expression. "You wore a blue dress, the same color as the summer sky." The tire iron pauses in his hands as memories flood back. The corsage he'd saved 3 weeks of paper route money to buy, the way she'd smiled when he pinned it to her dress, careful not to stick her. The scent of her perfume as they danced too. "Can't help falling in love." "It was powder blue," Elizabeth corrects gently, "and you wore your father's tie, the one with the tiny diamonds." Little did I know it would be the only time I ever wore it. Henry straightens up, meeting her eyes. "Dad passed that summer." Elizabeth's hand moves as if to touch his arm, then falls back to her side. "I remember. I wanted to reach out, but we'd already made our choices by then," Henry finishes. The words hang in the air between them, heavy with unspoken regrets. The flat tire waits patiently as they stand there, two people who once knew each other better than anyone else in the world, now separated by a lifetime of different choices and paths not taken. Around them, maple leaves drift lazily to the ground, marking the passage of time with their gentle descent. Henry clears his throat and returns to the task at hand. "Let's get you back on the road. Storm's coming in." By the look of those clouds, Elizabeth nods, wrapping her cardigan tighter around herself as the wind picks up. But neither of them can ignore how the simple act of changing a tire has somehow changed everything else too. The vintage jack handle feels familiar in Henry's grip. It's the same model his father used in their family garage decades ago. As he works, Elizabeth kneels beside him, holding the flashlight steady against the darkening sky. Her presence so close makes his hands less sure than usual. "You know," Elizabeth says, "this reminds me of my father's garage. He had a handle just like that one. Parker's Auto Supply," Henry remembers. "Everything in that shop was built to last forever, unlike some things." Elizabeth adds softly, and Henry feels the weight of her words. Thunder rumbles in the distance as they work together, falling into an easy rhythm that belies their years apart. Elizabeth hands him tools without being asked, remembering the routine from countless afternoons spent in her father's garage. "Sarah, my daughter, she always tells me I should trade this old car in," Elizabeth says, breaking the comfortable silence. "But I suppose I'm sentimental about certain things." Henry nods, understanding completely. "Sometimes the old things are worth holding on to, and sometimes," Elizabeth says, her voice catching slightly, "we don't realize what we have until it's gone." The wind picks up, carrying the scent of approaching rain. Henry works faster, but his mind drifts to another stormy afternoon, decades ago, when they'd taken shelter in her father's garage. They were 17, soaked to the skin, laughing as they watched the rain while sharing a Coca-Cola and dreams of the future. "Remember that storm in junior year?" Elizabeth asks, as if reading his thoughts. "When we got caught in the rain after school. Your father found us in the garage." Henry chuckles. "He tried to look stern, but I saw him hiding a smile. He liked you," Elizabeth confesses. "Always said you were going places." Henry tightens the last lug nut, perhaps a bit harder than necessary. "Turns out I didn't go very far after all. Still right here in Burlington." "Sometimes staying put takes more courage than leaving," Elizabeth offers. She reaches down to help him put away the tools, their hands brushing briefly. The contact, though fleeting, sends a jolt through them both. The spare tire secured, Henry starts gathering his tools. The old jack-handle catches the last rays of sunlight breaking through the clouds, its worn surface reflecting years of use and care. "This was my father's," he explains, turning it over in his hands. "After he passed, I kept his tools, figured someone should keep fixing things." Elizabeth's eyes soften with understanding. "You always did like to fix things, Henry, even back then." "Some things can't be fixed," he replies, thinking of all the years between them. "No," she agrees, "but sometimes they don't need fixing. Sometimes they just need time." Another rumble of thunder, closer now. Elizabeth glances at the sky, then back at Henry. "I should get going before this storm hits. I'm staying at the Golden, Maple Inn just down the road." Henry closes his toolbox, each click of the latches marking another moment slipping away. "The old Morrison place, they fixed it up nice." "Yes, they did." Elizabeth hesitates, then adds, "I'm in town for a week, visiting Sarah and her family." The words hang between them, an invitation neither of them quite ready to acknowledge. Henry nods, trying to keep his voice casual. "The Golden Maple has good coffee. In the morning, I mean." 8 o'clock, Elizabeth says softly. "I always was an early riser." "Some habits don't change," Henry replies, managing a smile. They stand there for a moment longer, neither wanting to be the first to leave. The wind whips Elizabeth's hair, and she reaches up to touch her pearl earring again. That familiar gesture that has somehow survived 5 decades unchanged. "Thank you, Henry, for the help and for remembering. Hard to forget," he says, simply, and they both know he's not talking about changing tires. As Elizabeth drives away, the first heavy drops of rain begin to fall. Henry stands there, getting slowly soaked, watching her taillights disappear around the bend. The old jack, handle in his toolbox, seems to carry the weight of everything that's been said, and everything that hasn't. The rain comes down in sheets now, drumming against the roof of Henry's pickup as he starts the engine. Lightning flashes, illuminating Elizabeth's car ahead, its hazard lights still blinking weakly. She's pulling over again, this time into the gravel lot of May's diner. Henry finds himself following, guided by instinct more than thought. The diner's neon sign casts a warm glow through the rain. May's in faded pink, open 24 hours, barely flickering beneath it. The place hasn't changed much since they were teenagers. They make a dash for the entrance, arriving at the door simultaneously. Henry reaches for the handle just as Elizabeth does, their hands meeting briefly. Inside, the warmth wraps around them like a familiar blanket. "Well, look who the storm blew in," calls May Jr., looking just like her mother did decades ago. Behind that same counter. Henry Sullivan, you picking up strays in this weather? Elizabeth pulls a tissue from her purse to dab at her damp hair, and something falls to the floor, an old receipt yellowed with age. Henry bends to pick it up, and his breath catches. The faded print still shows the date, June 15th, 1965. 2. Chocolate malts, 1 order of fries to share. You kept this? He asks, his voice barely a whisper. Elizabeth takes the receipt, her fingers trembling slightly. Found it in an old wallet last year. I meant to throw it away, but some things are hard to let go of, Henry finishes. May Jr. approaches with menus, but they wave them away. Some orders don't need to be spoken. 2 chocolate malts, Elizabeth says, and 1 order of fries to share, Henry adds. May Jr.'s eyebrows rise slightly, but she just smiles and heads back to the counter. The jukebox in the corner plays softly. Some new song trying to sound old, but it can't compete with their memories. Sarah thinks I'm crazy, Elizabeth says, settling into a booth. Coming back here after all these years. Are you crazy? I mean, Henry slides into the seat across from her, just like he used to. Maybe a little. She smiles. And for a moment she's 17 again. I told her I needed to sort through Mom's things, now that the house is being sold. But really, she pauses, looking out at the rain. Really, I just needed to see it all again. The town, the memories, me? Henry asks softly. Elizabeth meets his eyes. I didn't know you'd still be here. Where else would I be? Burlington's home. The malts arrive, topped with whipped cream and cherries, served in the same style of glass from 50 years ago. May Jr. sets the fries between them, an unspoken invitation to share. Do you remember? Elizabeth starts, then laughs softly. Well, I suppose you remember everything too. The night before you left for college, Henry says. Right here in this booth, you were wearing your yellow sundress. And you had news too, Elizabeth adds, stirring her malt with the long silver spoon. The apprenticeship at Parker's garage. Your father's offer. Henry nods. He said I had a real talent, could take over the business someday, but you wanted more than that. I thought I did. Henry takes a fry, considers it. Funny how life works out. Ended up opening my own garage anyway, just 10 years later than planned. Lightning flashes outside, followed by a low rumble of thunder. The rain shows no sign of letting up. I wrote, "To you," Elizabeth says suddenly, "that first year at college. 3 letters. I never got them. I never sent them." She pulls another fry from the basket, breaks it in half. I'd write them late at night, pour my heart out, and in the morning I'd tell myself it was better this way, that we'd both move on, find new dreams. Did you? Henry asks. Find new dreams? Elizabeth's hand goes to her pearl earring again, that unconscious gesture that survived all these years. Different ones, good ones even, but sometimes you wonder about the road not taken, Henry finishes. They sit in comfortable silence, sharing fries and memories. The storm rages outside, but in here time seems to stand still. The old receipt sits between them on the table, a paper ghost of younger selves who once shared this same booth, these same dreams. May Jr. refills their water glasses without asking, just like her mother used to do. Some traditions never change in small towns. We should probably talk about tomorrow, Elizabeth says finally, about that coffee. The rain drums against the windows, nature's own heartbeat matching the rhythm of possibilities unfolding between them. You'd like Sarah, Elizabeth says, pulling out her phone. Her fingers move with surprising confidence across the screen. She's a lot like you, actually, always fixing things, always helping people. She finds what she's looking for, a digitized photo from their senior yearbook. The image is slightly grainy, but it captures them perfectly. Henry in his Letterman jacket, Elizabeth leaning against the old oak tree outside the school library, both smiling, both unaware of how their paths would diverge. My granddaughter, Emma, helped me scan all the old photos, Elizabeth explains. She says it's important to preserve memories. She's 12, but sometimes she sounds like she's 50. Henry leans closer to see the photo. caught off guard by how young they look, how full of promise. That tree's still there, you know, still dropping acorns on unsuspecting students. And what about you, Henry? Did you have children? 2 boys. He nods, pulling out his own phone. James and Michael, both mechanics, if you can believe it, though James does more computer diagnostics these days than actual engine work. The rain continues its steady rhythm against the windows as they share photos and stories. Elizabeth tells him about her life in Boston, her career as a high school chemistry teacher, her late husband Thomas, who passed 3 years ago. Henry speaks of his wife Margaret, lost to cancer in '98, of raising their boys alone, of finding purpose in the work that had once seemed too small for his dreams. It's strange, Elizabeth muses, stirring what's left of her malt, how we spend our youth thinking we have to chase something grand, something far away, only to find that the real treasures were often right in front of us. Like chemistry class? Henry asks with a slight smile. When you helped me understand molecular bonds. As I recall, you understood them just fine. You just kept asking for help so we could talk more. They laughed together, the sound mingling with the storm outside. The diner has emptied now, just May Jr. wiping down the counter and giving them occasional glances. Thomas knew about you, Elizabeth says suddenly. I told him early in our marriage, about my first love, the boy who could fix anything except a broken heart. Henry is quiet for a moment, considering. Margaret knew too, said she could tell by the way I looked at certain cars that came into the shop, the models from our era, said they reminded me of someone. Were you happy, Henry? Elizabeth asks softly, with your life, your choices? Yes, he answers honestly. Different than I planned, but yes. You? Yes. Though sitting here now, she gestures to the space. Between them, at all the years and choices that brought them to this moment, I wonder if happiness isn't something that can have multiple chapters. Lightning flashes again, but the thunder is more distant now. The storm is passing, taking with it the excuse for them to stay. Sarah will be wondering where I am, Elizabeth says, but makes no move to leave. The boys always tell me I should get one of those tracking apps, Henry replies. So they know I'm safe on my evening drives? Do you take evening drives often? Every Thursday, he admits, past the old school, past Parker's, what used to be Parker's, past all the places that hold memories. Elizabeth's hand moves across the table, hesitates, then gently covers his. Her skin is soft, marked with the same signs of age and life that map his own hands. And now here we are, making new ones. The yearbook photo glows from her phone screen between them, young faces frozen in time while their older selves sit in the same poses. Him leaning forward slightly, her with that gentle half-smile that hasn't changed in 50 years. About tomorrow, Henry starts. 8 o'clock, Elizabeth confirms. Unless you'd like to show me what's become of that old oak tree. The storm's nearly past. Outside, the clouds are breaking, revealing patches of early evening sky. Sometimes Henry thinks life gives you second chances. The trick is being brave enough to take them. The old oak tree casts long shadows in the evening light as they walk across the empty school parking lot. Their footsteps crunch on scattered acorns, nature's breadcrumbs leading them back through time. Wait here, Henry says suddenly. He hurries back to his truck, movements deliberate despite his urgency. When he returns, he's holding a worn leather satchel, the kind he used to carry his textbooks in. You kept it, Elizabeth observes, recognizing the bag she'd given him for his 18th birthday, and everything in it. Henry's hands tremble slightly as he opens the clasp. Inside, bound together with a faded blue ribbon, is a stack of letters. I wrote to you too. Every week that first year, then every month, then on birthdays and Christmas. Elizabeth takes the bundle carefully, as if handling a precious artifact. The top envelope is addressed to Miss Elizabeth Porter, Boston University, the handwriting unmistakably younger Henry's. I never sent them either, he confesses. Each time I'd get to the post office, I'd tell myself you were building a new life, that I had no right to complicate things. May I? Elizabeth asks, fingers hovering over the ribbon. Henry nods, and she gently pulls one letter free. The paper is soft with age, the ink slightly faded. Dear Elizabeth, she reads aloud. Today I fixed Mrs. Anderson's Chevrolet. The whole time I was working, I could hear your voice teasing me about getting grease on my church clothes. Her voice catches as she continues reading. I keep thinking about telling you how Parker's offered me partnership in the garage, how maybe now I could offer you the future we talked about. But then I remember you're probably sitting in some college lecture hall, learning things that will take you far beyond our small-town dreams. I was so young, Henry says softly, so sure I knew what was best for everyone. Elizabeth carefully refolds the letter. I was in chemistry class when I read about the garage in the local paper Mom sent me. Local youth declines partnership at Parker's Auto. I cried in the middle of a lecture about electron configurations. We were both trying to do the right thing, Henry says, taking the letter back, giving each other space to grow. And now, here we are. Elizabeth gestures to the oak tree, grown in completely different directions, but somehow, back where we started. A cool breeze rustles the leaves above them, sending a few early autumn stragglers drifting down. Elizabeth catches one, twirls it by its stem. There are more letters, Henry says. One for every major moment I wanted to share with you. When James was born, when Margaret got sick, when Michael graduated. Life has a way of piling up, doesn't it? Elizabeth tucks the leaf into her pocket. All these moments we think we'll come back to someday. Is that why you're really here? Henry asks gently. To come back to something? Elizabeth is quiet for a long moment, watching the sunset paint the school buildings in shades of gold. Sarah's pregnant, she says finally. My first grandchild. She wants me to move closer, to be part of the baby's life. The house she found, it's just 3 blocks from here. The weight of this revelation settles between them, like another letter waiting to be opened. And what do you want? Henry asks. I want... Elizabeth turns to face him fully. I want to stop writing letters in my head that I never send. I want to stop wondering about paths not taken. I want... Coffee at 8? Henry suggests, his heart pounding like it did at 17. Coffee at 8, she agrees. Then with a hint of their old playfulness, don't be late. I hear the Golden Maple has real maple syrup for their pancakes. They walk back to their cars as the last light fades from the sky. The letters return to Henry's satchel, but their words linger in the air between them, decades of unspoken feelings finally finding their way into the open. At the parking lot, they pause, neither quite ready to end this unexpected journey through the past. Henry, Elizabeth says as she opens her car door, save those letters. Maybe we can read another one tomorrow. I'd like that, he replies. I'd like that very much. 8 o'clock finds them at a corner table in the Golden Maple Inn's restaurant, morning light streaming through stained glass windows. Henry absently turns his wedding ring with his thumb, a habit of 35 years, while Elizabeth adds cream to her coffee. James called this morning, Henry says, breaking their comfortable silence. Wanted to know why I was out in the storm yesterday. Says the tracking app showed me parked at Maze for 2 hours. So you did get that app? Elizabeth smiles, stirring. Her coffee, her own gold band catches the light, a different kind of memory. The boys insisted after I hit 70. Funny how the tables turn. Now they're the ones worrying. He pauses, considering his next words. I told him about you. Elizabeth looks up, surprised. And? He remembered your name, from Margaret's stories, if you can believe it. She used to tell the boys about the girl who taught their dad about chemistry. The waitress arrives with plates of pancakes, steam rising with the scent of real maple syrup. Elizabeth waits until they're alone again before speaking. Sarah knows too. Now, about yesterday, she was concerned. Reminded me that Thomas has only been gone 3 years. And what did you tell her? That some people you never really leave behind, even when you think you have. Elizabeth cuts into her pancakes with deliberate care. She wants me to be happy. but she's protective. After Thomas, well, she saw how hard it was. Henry nods, understanding. His own grief for Margaret had been a long journey, one his sons had witnessed every step of the way. "It's strange," he says, "wearing their rings, feeling their love still with us while we sit here, making new memories?" Elizabeth suggests gently, "Is that what we're doing?" Before she can answer, Henry's phone buzzes. A text from Michael. "Need help at the garage. Thompson's Cadillac acting up again." Elizabeth sees the message. "Go, duty calls." "Michael can handle Thompson's Cadillac," Henry starts, but Elizabeth shakes her head. "I have a lunch date with Sarah anyway. She wants to show me that house she found." She hesitates, then adds, "The realtor's meeting us there." The weight of their responsibilities settles around them like familiar coats, comfortable, but sometimes heavy. "When Margaret was sick," Henry says suddenly, "she made me promise not to spend the rest of my life alone. Said love wasn't something you could only have once." Thomas said something similar, Elizabeth admits, though I don't think either of them imagined this scenario. They share a knowing look, both thinking of their spouses, not with guilt, but with gratitude for the love they'd shared and the wisdom they'd left behind. "The boys want to meet you," Henry says, if that's something you'd consider." "Sarah wants to show you the house," Elizabeth counters, "says it has a garage perfect for tinkering." The morning light shifts, painting patterns on their table through the stained glass. Their rings glint in the colored light, symbols of lives well lived, of loves well loved, of stories that shaped them into who they are now. Henry's phone buzzes again. Elizabeth's shows a text from Sarah, reality calling them back to their separate lives. "Dinner?" Henry suggests. "Tonight, I know a place that serves pretty good chocolate malts." "May's at 6, Elizabeth agrees. She stands, gathering her purse. "Henry, thank you for the pancakes, and for understanding about Sarah, about Thomas. Thank you for understanding about the boys, about Margaret." They part ways in the inn's parking lot, each heading toward their own obligations. But something has shifted, like the morning light through stained glass, familiar elements combining to create something new and unexpectedly beautiful. Evening sunlight bathes Henry's backyard in honey gold tones as he leads Elizabeth along the stone path he laid himself 20 years ago. The garden is his pride and joy, a hobby that filled the quiet hours after Margaret passed. Margaret started it, he explains, gesturing to the neat beds of perennials. Said a mechanic should know how to grow things, not just fix them. But this, he stops before a thriving rose bush, its pale pink blooms nodding in the evening breeze. "This one I planted last spring." Elizabeth's breath catches. "Queen Elizabeth roses, the same kind you grew in your mother's garden," Henry finishes. "I remembered." She kneels to breathe in their sweet fragrance, touching a petal with gentle fingers. "Mom used to say these were the most forgiving roses. Cut them back in winter, and they'd always return stronger in spring, like some memories," Henry says softly. The garden holds other treasures. Herbs Margaret planted for cooking, tomato vines heavy with late-season fruit, a small pond with goldfish that catch the fading light like copper pennies. "Sarah loved the house," Elizabeth says, settling onto a weathered garden bench. "Says it has good bones, whatever that means. The realtor thinks we could close by month's end." Henry joins her on the bench, careful to leave space between them. "That's quick." "Too quick?" She turns to study his face. "Be honest, Henry. Are we being foolish? At our age, starting something new?" A monarch butterfly lands on the rosebush, wings opening and closing lazily. Henry watches it for a moment before answering. "I spend every morning out here," he says. "Planting, pruning, starting new things. The garden doesn't seem to mind how old I am." Elizabeth laughs softly. "Trust you to find wisdom in a flower bed." "Well, I learned from the best chemistry tutor that everything in life is about proper combinations, the right elements coming together at the right time." The butterfly takes flight, dancing on the evening breeze. From inside the house comes the sound of a ringing phone. "That'll be Michael," Henry sighs. He checks in every evening. Go, Elizabeth says. I should head back to the inn anyway. Sarah's coming by with ultrasound pictures, but neither moves. The roses release their perfume into the cooling air, crickets begin their evening chorus, and two people who have lived full lives sit quietly, watching the day fade into dusk. I'd like to show you something first, Henry says finally. He reaches down beside the bench and produces a small gardening trowel. Every spring I dig up part of this garden and start something new. Would you like to help me plan next year's additions? The question holds more than just talk of flowers and soil. Elizabeth takes the trowel, feels its worn handle, smooth from years of use. I've always wanted to try growing lavender, she says. I hear it pairs well with roses. Above them, the first stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. New light. In an ancient heaven. Proof that even the oldest things can still hold surprises. May Jr. sets 2 cups of coffee on their usual table without being asked. The local paper lies folded between them, open to the community section. There, in black and white, is the announcement of their upcoming high school reunion. Complete. With a photo from their senior year. News travels fast in small towns, Elizabeth says, touching the photograph. Sarah says the realtor mentioned seeing us at the Golden Maple. Mrs. Thompson told Michael she saw us walking in the garden. Henry adds cream to his coffee. Asked if she should be buying a new hat. A new hat? For the wedding? His eyes crinkle with amusement. Apparently the whole town's planning our future. The diner's bell chimes as Mrs. Peterson from the library enters. She spots them and beams, heading straight for their table. Elizabeth Porter, I thought that was you I saw at the market yesterday. You haven't aged a day since you used to help me shelve books after school. She turns to Henry. And you, Mr. Sullivan, I haven't seen you smile this much since, well, in quite some time. After she moves on, Elizabeth leans forward. Perhaps we should have been more discreet. In Burlington, might as well try to hide a marching band. Henry gestures around the diner. Besides, these people knew us when. Knew Margaret, knew Thomas. They understand. As if on cue, old Mr. Williams walks past their table, tips his hat and says, "About time, you two, about time." Elizabeth unfolds the paper further, revealing more local news. Look at this. They're planning to restore the old movie theatre, the one where we had our first date, Henry finishes. Rebel without a cause. You wore your father's jacket because the air conditioning was always too cold. A young waitress approaches with fresh coffee, her name tag reading, Katie. Mrs. May, told me about you two. Said you used to come here every Friday after the movies. Said it was the sweetest thing, watching you share a malt with 2 straws. After she leaves, Elizabeth shakes her head, laughing softly. We're becoming a local legend. Could be worse. Henry replies. Remember when the whole town talked about Principal Garcia and the music teacher? Florence and Robert, they just celebrated their 40th anniversary. They share a look, both thinking about time and its strange circles. Outside, familiar faces pass by the window, each one smiling, nodding, carrying the story of Henry and Elizabeth's reunion to other corners of Burlington. Sarah worries, Elizabeth admits, says small-town gossip can be suffocating. What do you think? She considers this, watching their neighbors go about their morning routines. I think there's something beautiful about being part of a community that remembers your story, that celebrates second chances. Henry reaches across the table, takes her hand. For the first time, they don't worry about who might see. The morning sun streams through May's windows, warming their joined hands, glinting off wedding rings that tell of love's endurance in all its forms. Besides, Elizabeth adds with a smile, if they're going to talk anyway, we might as well give them something worth talking about. The community center's annual harvest dance transforms the old gymnasium into a wonderland of autumn decorations and twinkling lights. Henry stands at the entrance, adjusting his tie, the first one he's worn since James's wedding 3 years ago. Dad, Michael calls, approaching with his wife Jenny. We saved seats near the... Oh! He spots Elizabeth walking up the path, elegant in a deep blue dress that makes Henry's heart skip, just like it did 50 years ago. "Elizabeth," Michael says warmly, extending his hand. "I've heard so much about you, both recently and, well, all my life, really." Jenny elbows him gently. "What Michael means is we're glad you could come. Henry hasn't attended one of these dances since Margaret," Henry finishes softly. "She loved these gatherings." Elizabeth touches his arm gently. "Thomas, too. He said small-town dances had more honest joy than any fancy city ball. Inside, the local band sets up, their instruments gleaming under the lights. The lead guitarist, young Tommy Peterson, pulls out a vinyl record and holds it up. 'Special request,' he announces, grinning at Henry and Elizabeth. 'Found this in my grandpa's collection. 1965, original pressing. The familiar opening notes of Can't Help Falling in Love fill the gymnasium.' Henry turns to Elizabeth, sees the recognition in her eyes. 'Our song,' she whispers. 'May I?' Henry extends his hand, aware of the eyes watching them, but caring only about her answer. They move to the dance floor as others step back, creating space. Elizabeth's hand fits in his, like it never forgot its place, her other hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "James just walked in," Henry murmurs as they sway to the music. "With Sarah. They planned this, didn't they? Probably conspired. Over coffee this morning, Sarah mentioned meeting James at the Golden Maple." Elizabeth laughs softly. "Our children, playing matchmaker." The vinyl record spins on the turntable, its slight imperfections adding warmth to the song that no digital version could capture. Other couples join them on the dance floor, but Henry and Elizabeth remain in their own world of memory and possibility. "Do you remember," Henry asks, "how nervous I was at prom, kept stepping on your dress, and now look at you, regular Fred." "Esther, Margaret made me take lessons before our wedding. Said she wouldn't have her husband shuffling through their first dance." Elizabeth smiles. "Thomas, too, though he never quite got the hang of it. Always said he had 2 left feet. They speak of their late spouses naturally now, their memories. A bridge rather than a barrier between them. The song ends, but Tommy puts on another from the same era. Henry and Elizabeth keep dancing, their movements comfortable, unhurried. "Sarah's closing on the house next week," Elizabeth says. "She's already planning where to put the nursery." "The garage needs some work," Henry offers. "If you'd like my professional opinion." "Is that what this is? Professional interest?" Their ease meet, and 50 years dissolve in a shared smile. From their table, James and Sarah watch with matching expressions of satisfaction. Michael and Jenny have joined the dance floor, moving past with encouraging smiles. "Your daughter's good." "For him," Jenny tells Elizabeth as they twirl by. "I haven't seen Henry this happy in years." "Your father-in-law's good for her too," Sarah adds, appearing with punch. "Mum's been talking about Burlington like it's home already." The vinyl record plays on, its gentle scratches and warm tones, a reminder that some things improve with age. Outside, autumn leaves dance in the October breeze, and inside, 2 people who once thought their dance was over discover that sometimes the best songs play more than once. Elizabeth sits at her father's old desk in the soon-to-be-sold family home, holding his brass compass. The needle swings steadily north, just as reliable as it was when he used it to teach her about direction and purpose 50 years ago. "Dad always said a compass doesn't tell you where to go," she tells Henry, who stands by the window. "It just helps you stay true to the course you've chosen." Henry turns from watching leaves skitter across the front lawn. "And what course is that?" The house creaks around them, settling into autumn evening. Boxes line the walls, each labeled in Sarah's neat handwriting. Keep, donate, consider. A lifetime sorted into cardboard categories. The realtor called. Elizabeth says, setting down the compass, "There's another offer on Mom's house, above asking price." "Ah." Henry moves closer, understanding the weight of the moment. "And the house near Sarah." Closing papers ready to sign. Elizabeth picks up the compass again, watches the needle adjust. It all seems to be moving so fast, too fast. I don't know. She looks up at him. Yesterday, I found myself planning where my herbs would go in your garden. Then I remembered we haven't actually talked about that. About what this is. What we're doing. Henry pulls up a chair, sits beside her. At the desk. What do you want it to be? That's just it. When Thomas was alive, every decision had its proper timeline. Dating, marriage, house, family, it all followed a pattern. But now, she gestures to the compass. The needle spins, but the landmarks are different. I've been thinking about the garage, Henry says quietly. About slowing down, letting Michael take more control. He's ready, has been for a while. Henry Sullivan, considering retirement, considering change. He takes her hand. Elizabeth, I'm not asking for any promises. We're not teenagers planning a future anymore. We're grown-ups writing a new chapter, she suggests. Something like that. He smiles. I just know that when you're not here, I find myself looking for you. In the garden, at May's, even in the garage, especially when someone brings in a car from our era. Elizabeth turns her hand in his, their fingers intertwining. Sarah asked me last night if I was sure about moving back. Said Boston has better medical care, more activities for seniors. And what did you tell her? That at our age, the best medicine is being where your heart feels at home. The compass sits between them on the desk, its needle pointing steadily north while they contemplate their own direction. Outside, a car door slams, Sarah arriving to help with more packing. I'm not selling Mum's house, Elizabeth says suddenly. Not yet, but I am buying the one near Sarah, taking it one step at a time? Yes, and maybe... She meets his eyes. Maybe seeing where this path leads us? Henry squeezes her hand. I like the sound of that. Sarah's footsteps sound on the porch. Elizabeth quickly wipes her eyes but doesn't let go of Henry's hand. When Sarah enters, carrying yet another empty box, she takes in the scene. Her mother and Henry, the compass between them, their joined hands on her grandfather's desk. Everything okay? She asks softly. Elizabeth looks at Henry, then back to her daughter. Yes, she says, I think it really is. The compass needle holds steady, pointing toward a future neither of them had expected, but both now welcome. One careful step at a time. The attic of Elizabeth's childhood home holds 50 years of carefully preserved memories. As Henry helps her sort through the last boxes, dust motes dancing in the beam of their flashlights, Elizabeth uncovers a small leather-bound book beneath a stack of old textbooks. Mum's diary, she says, running her fingers over the cracked spine. I didn't know she kept one. Henry sets down the box he's carrying. Should we? Elizabeth opens the diary carefully, its pages brittle with age. Her eyes widen as she reads. Henry, it's about us. She finds an entry dated June 1965. Elizabeth doesn't know yet, but I saw the acceptance letter from Parker's garage. Henry's been offered the apprenticeship, the one he's dreamed of. But he won't take it, not now that Elizabeth's been accepted to Boston University. My daughter, first in our family to go to college, and that boy, that wonderful boy, is going to let her go, let her fly. He loves her enough to stay silent. You knew? Elizabeth looks up at Henry. About the apprenticeship before I left? Henry sits beside her on an old trunk. Mr. Parker offered it that spring. Full training, partnership track, everything I thought I wanted. But you never said. You were so excited about Boston, about studying chemistry, breaking new ground. How could I ask you to stay? Elizabeth turns more pages, finds another entry. Ran into Henry at the market today. He was buying stamps, but I noticed he didn't mail any letters. Just like Elizabeth, writing letters she never sends. Both of them so determined to do what's right for the other. Both of them breaking their own hearts in the process. Mum knew, Elizabeth whispers. All along she knew we were both trying to protect each other, Henry finishes. Seems we weren't as subtle as we thought. More entries follow, chronicling their parallel lives through her mother's observant eyes. The diary tells of Henry's quiet success with the garage he eventually opened, of Elizabeth's teaching career, of their separate marriages and joys and sorrows. One entry, dated years later, reads, "Saw Henry at Margaret's funeral today. He stood so straight, so strong for his boys." Elizabeth called from Boston this evening, and I could hear in her voice that she knew somehow about the loss. Some connections, it seems, never truly break. She kept track of both of us, Elizabeth says softly. All those years. Your mother was a wise woman. She wrote something else near the end. Elizabeth turns to one of the last pages. Sometimes life gives second chances, not because we didn't get it right the first time, but because we're finally ready to understand just how right it was. Henry takes the diary gently, reads the words himself. Do you think she knew that someday we'd find our way back? I think, Elizabeth wipes away a tear, I think she hoped we would. That's why she kept this, kept all these memories safe. The attic creaks around them, a half-century of stored memories settling in the growing dusk. Below they can hear Sarah and James chatting as they pack the kitchen, their voices drifting up through the floorboards. We were so young, Henry says, thinking we had to choose between love and dreams. And now we know that sometimes the dream and the love are the same thing, just taking the long way home. Elizabeth takes the diary, holds it close. Mom wrote one more thing the day before she passed. Tell Elizabeth that timing is everything. And it's never too late for the right time. They sit together in the attic's gentle shadows, surrounded by boxes of memories, while their children work below and the autumn wind whispers around the eaves. The diary rests between them, finally, sharing its long-held secrets, showing them that sometimes the longest route is the one that leads you exactly where you need to be. Sarah places the new house key in Elizabeth's palm at the closing meeting. It gleams brass bright against her mother's skin, a small weight carrying large promises. The realtor says everything's set, Sarah announces. Just need your signature. On the final papers, Mom. Elizabeth looks at Henry, who's been quietly studying the property plans spread across the realtor's desk. His reading glasses perch on the end of his nose, a recent concession to time that somehow makes him even more endearing to her. The garage has good bones, he says, using Sarah's favorite phrase. Needs some updating, but the structure's solid. Could make a nice workshop. Workshop? Elizabeth raises an eyebrow, planning to spend some time there. Their eyes meet across the desk, and Sarah pretends to be very interested in her phone, hiding a smile. Well, Henry clears his throat. Michael's taking over most of the garage operations next month. Says it's time I learned the meaning of semi-retirement. The realtor, Mrs. Bailey, returns with the final paperwork. Just a few more signatures, Mrs. Porter. Or, she glances between Elizabeth and Henry. Should I say, Porter is fine, Elizabeth says gently. For now. She signs where indicated, the pen flowing smoothly across paper. Each signature feels like both an ending and a beginning. When she finishes, she holds up the key. Would you like to see it again? She asks Henry. In daylight this time? They drive separately. Some habits aren't quite ready to change, and meet in the driveway of Elizabeth's new home. It's a craftsman-style house, smaller than her family home, but perfect for this new chapter. The late afternoon sun catches the beveled glass in the front door, sending rainbow patterns across the porch. I thought maybe Herb's here, Elizabeth says, gesturing to a sunny patch near the kitchen window. And those rose bushes we talked about along the fence. The garage would need proper ventilation for a workshop, Henry adds. And maybe a small greenhouse attached to the south wall. They walk the property together, pointing out possibilities, sketching the future with careful words. Their footsteps fall into an easy rhythm, matching pace without thought. Sarah mentioned dinner, Elizabeth says. She and James want to celebrate the closing. They're thinking Mays. Where else? Henry smiles. Michael and Jenny will join us, and he hesitates, then continues, I thought maybe after you might want to see some sketches I've been working on for the workshop and greenhouse. Elizabeth stops walking, turns to face him. You've been planning? Just ideas, he says quickly. Nothing set in stone. But I thought, well, if I'm going to be helping with the garden. She holds up the key between them. Sunlight glints off its untarnished surface, full of promise. I have a spare, she says softly. A spare. Sarah insisted the house come with 2 keys. Said it was more practical that way. Henry understands what she's offering. Not just access to the house, but to this new life they're slowly building. He takes the key, his fingers brushing hers. I'll need it, he says, if I'm going to start on that workshop before winter. From inside the house comes the sound of Sarah's voice. She must have arrived through the back door. Mom, the inspector wants to show you something in the kitchen. Coming, Elizabeth calls back, but she doesn't move just yet, standing there. With Henry in the golden afternoon light, their shared key, a promise between them. Semi-retirement looks good on you, she tells him. Well, he replies, pocketing the key with careful deliberation. I hear it's all about timing. The medical report sits unopened on Henry's kitchen table, the hospital logo stark against the white envelope. Elizabeth watches him stare at it, his coffee growing cold beside him. Open it, she says gently. Whatever it says, we'll face it. Together. His hands aren't quite steady as he tears the envelope. The words blur before his eyes. Cardiac irregularities. Further testing required. Caution advised. Elizabeth takes the report, reads it carefully. Her chemistry teacher's mind breaks down the medical terminology, making sense of what his frightened heart can't process. It's preliminary, she says firmly, and Dr. Walker wants to run more tests. That's good, Henry. It means they're being thorough. I promised Michael I'd help with the Thompson account next week. His voice sounds distant to his own ears. And the workshop plans? We'll wait. Elizabeth reaches across the table, takes his hand. Right now, we focus on this. The kitchen clock ticks steadily, marking time in a way that suddenly seems precious. Through the window, they can see the garden where they'd planted bulbs just yesterday, planning for a spring. They'd assumed they'd share. I should call the boys, Henry says. Already done. Elizabeth squeezes his hand. Sarah, too. They're on their way. He looks at her sharply. You knew before I opened it. Dr. Walker called me this morning. She knew She doesn't finish, doesn't need to. What they are to each other has moved beyond simple definitions. I'm sorry, he says suddenly. This isn't what you signed up for. Moving back to Burlington, starting fresh. It wasn't supposed to include hospital visits and worried children. Henry Sullivan. Elizabeth's voice carries the same tone she used on struggling chemistry students. Do you remember what Thomas's illness taught me? He shakes his head. That love doesn't come with guarantees. It comes with whatever walks through the door, and we face it together. The sound of cars pulling up outside. Michael's SUV, James's hybrid. Their children arriving, bringing support and worry in equal measure. Mum's already looking for cardiac specialists, Sarah announces as they enter, pulling out her tablet. There's an excellent one in Burlington now. No need to travel to Boston. Michael sets a bag of May's takeout on the counter, and I've got the garage-covered dad, for as long as needed. I don't want to be a burden, Henry starts, but Elizabeth cuts him off. You weren't a burden at 17, and you're not one now. She picks up the medical report. This is just life asking us to slow down and pay attention. James unpacks the food. The familiar aroma of May's comfort food filling the kitchen. Jenny's bringing the kids by later. She says Grandpa needs his daily dose of great-grandchild chaos. And Emma wants to show you her science project, Sarah adds. Says she needs her honorary grandpa's opinion. Henry looks around his kitchen at the family gathered there. His sons, Elizabeth's daughter, the life they're all building together. The medical report seems less threatening now, just one challenge among many they'll face. The garden, he says suddenly. The bulbs we planted will bloom in spring, Elizabeth finishes, and we'll be there to see them. She doesn't promise everything will be fine. After Thomas, after Margaret, they both know better than to make absolute promises. But she promises presence, commitment, love that faces whatever comes through the door. Michael starts passing out plates. James pours drinks, and Sarah pulls up medical information on her tablet. their children working together as naturally as if they'd always been family. Elizabeth keeps hold of Henry's hand under the table, her grip sure and steady. The medical report lies between them, but it's just paper. What matters is this: the warmth of joined hands, the sound of family in the kitchen, and the certainty that whatever comes next, they'll face it together. The new family photo sits framed on Dr. Walker's desk. 3 generations gathered in Henry's garden, everyone beaming at the camera. It was taken just last week, after they got the final test results back. "Your numbers are looking good, Henry," Dr. Walker says, reviewing his latest charts. "The medication is doing its job, and your lifestyle changes are making a real difference." Elizabeth, sitting beside him, releases a breath she feels like she's been holding for months. Under her hand, the old photo album in her lap holds the story of their journey. Hospital waiting rooms, family gatherings, quiet moments in the garden. "The workshop helped," Henry admits. "Having a project, taking it slow." He glances at Elizabeth. "Having someone make sure I actually take it slow. He's a much better patient than he was at 17, Elizabeth adds, when he had mono and tried to rebuild an engine anyway. Dr. Walker smiles at their easy banter. "Well, whatever you're doing, keep it up. Your heart's getting stronger." Outside the office, the spring sunshine carries the promise of warmer days ahead. The bulbs they planted during that uncertain autumn are beginning to push through the soil in Elizabeth's garden. Their garden now, really. "Sarah called this morning," Elizabeth says as they walk to the car. "The baby's kicking up a storm. She says it's definitely going to be a dancer." "Poor Thomas," Henry chuckles, referring to Sarah's husband. "He's got 2 left feet, just like his namesake." They drive to May's for lunch, a celebration of sorts, though they haven't told the family yet about the good news. These days, the diner feels as much like home as their own kitchens. May Jr. has their usual table ready. "The usual?" she asks, already knowing the answer. "Actually," Henry says, "I think today calls for a chocolate malt to share." Elizabeth raises an eyebrow. "Dr. Walker did say to celebrate in moderation." "1 malt, 2 straws, Henry counters. "Sounds pretty moderate to me." As they wait for their order, Elizabeth opens the photo album. There's Michael teaching Henry gentle exercises during his recovery, James installing safety rails in the new workshop, Sarah bringing dinner every Wednesday, Jenny organizing Henry's medications, her kids decorating the pill containers with stickers. Every page tells the story of a family knitting itself together through crisis. "Remember what you said?" Henry asks, watching her turn the pages. "That first day in Dr. Walker's office? That love doesn't come with guarantees? That it comes with whatever walks through the door?" He takes her hand across the table. "I never expected this. Any of it. The health scare, the way our families came together, finding you again. Life's funny that way," Elizabeth says. "Sometimes it takes a detour to bring you exactly where you need to be." May Jr. arrives with their malt, 2 straws positioned perfectly. "Just like old times," she says with a wink. But it's better than old times, they both know. The love they share now is deeper, richer, tested by time and strengthened by challenge. The photo album proves it, every page showing not just what they've overcome, but what they've built together. "Should we call the kids?" Elizabeth asks. "Tell them the good news?" "Let's wait until dinner," Henry suggests. Sarah's hosting. "Tonight, remember, everyone will be there." Elizabeth nods, understanding. Their good news belongs to the whole family now. Every single person who helped them reach this moment. They share the malt in comfortable silence, watching spring sunlight paint patterns on the diner's worn linoleum. Through the window, they can see their town going about its business. The same streets where they once walked as teenagers, now traveled with the wisdom of age and the gratitude of second chances. Emma's school project spans the dining room table in Sarah's house, a massive family tree with photographs and colorful lines connecting each generation. At 12, she's taken it upon herself to document both sides of her newly expanded family. "Look, Grandma," she says, pointing to where she's carefully placed Thomas's photo. "And here's Grandpa Henry. with Grandma Margaret. Her finger traces the lines connecting them all. See how the branches come together? Elizabeth helps her granddaughter attach another photo, this one of Henry's first grandchild, Michael's son Tommy, grinning with his new fishing rod. And this is where the baby will go, Emma explains, pointing to an empty space near Sarah's picture. Once she's born, Henry watches from the doorway, coffee cup in hand. You've got quite the historian. There, he tells Sarah, who's supervising while folding laundry. She gets it from Mom, Sarah says, that need to understand where everything connects. The doorbell rings, James arriving with his famous lasagna for their weekly family dinner. These Sunday gatherings have become a tradition over the past months, rotating between houses, blending recipes and stories and lives. I brought Mom's recipe box, James announces, holding up a battered tin container. Thought maybe we could compare notes with Elizabeth's family recipes. Margaret's sugar cookies, Michael calls from the living room. We need those for the baby shower next month. And Thomas's secret barbecue sauce, Jenny adds. The one Elizabeth finally shared at Tommy's birthday. Henry moves to stand behind Emma, studying her careful work. She's drawn the lines in different colors, red for birth families, blue for marriages, gold for what she calls heart connections. Why gold? He asks her. Because, Emma says with the wisdom of youth, some family you choose, like you and Grandma chose each other twice. Elizabeth joins them, slipping her hand into Henry's. And what about Margaret and Thomas? She asks gently. Where do they fit? Emma points to the golden lines. They're part of our heart family too. Without them, we wouldn't be who we are. Mum says we carry the love of everyone who's ever been part of our story. From the kitchen comes the sound of their children working together. James teaching Michael the secret to his mother's lasagna, Sarah and Jenny planning the baby shower, Tommy trying to sneak tastes when he thinks no one's looking. Speaking of carrying love, Sarah calls, Mum, could you and Henry help with the photo albums? We want to make a timeline for the shower showing both families. Both families. Elizabeth muses quietly to Henry. When did they become just one? Probably around the time Tommy started calling you Grandma E, he replies. Or when James asked for your mother's pie recipe. Emma adds another photograph to her tree, one taken at May's diner. Henry and Elizabeth sharing a malt with their grandchildren crowded around them. This is my favorite, she declares, because everyone's smiling like they know a happy secret. The secret is, Henry tells her, sometimes families grow in unexpected ways, like those volunteer sunflowers that pop up in Grandma's garden. The ones that come from the bird feeder seeds, Emma asks. Exactly, not planned but perfect right where they land. The evening settles into its familiar rhythm. Dinner preparations, story sharing, children running between adults who all keep one eye on them regardless of biological connection. Emma's family tree watches over it all, its golden lines shining in the early evening light. You know what this means, Elizabeth whispers to Henry as they set the table together. Once Emma turns this in, the whole school will know our story. Sweetheart, he replies, I think they already do, and I couldn't be prouder. May's diner has been transformed for the evening, twinkling lights strung across the ceiling, tables rearranged to make room for the gathering. A banner hangs above the counter. Happy 1-year anniversary of the flat tire that changed everything. The kids outdid themselves, Elizabeth says, touching the vintage watch box in her pocket. Inside, the restored 1965 Timex she found at an antique shop matches the one Henry wore in their yearbook photo. The diner fills with familiar faces, their children, grandchildren, friends from town. May Jr. serves Henry and Elizabeth's usual chocolate malt first, 2 straws, before attending to other guests. Remember when we were trying to keep things quiet? Henry asks, watching Tommy teach Emma how to make a paper airplane from a napkin. I think the town knew before we did, Elizabeth replies. Sarah approaches, one hand resting on her very pregnant belly. Mom, Henry, we have something to show you. She leads them to a corner where James has set up a projector. The screen flickers to life, and there's their story in photographs. Young Henry and Elizabeth at prom, their separate wedding photos with Margaret and Thomas, children growing up, and then that rainy afternoon 1 year ago, captured by May Jr.'s security camera. "We didn't even know that existed," Elizabeth whispers, watching their past selves discover each other again. "Keep watching," Sarah says softly. The images continue. Henry and Elizabeth in the garden, family dinners, hospital visits during Henry's health scare, holiday celebrations. Each photo shows their families growing closer, becoming one. But this, James says, changing the image, is our favorite. It's a simple snapshot from last week. Henry and Elizabeth on his porch swing, not posed or even aware of the camera. They're looking at each other and laughing about something, completely content in each other's company. "That's what love looks like," Emma announces with 12-year-old certainty. "When you're not even trying to look happy, you just are." Elizabeth reaches for the watch box, but Sarah stops her. "Wait, Mum, there's more." Michael steps forward, holding an envelope. "We've been planning this for months," he says, handing it to Henry. "All of us together. Inside is a deed to a small greenhouse, to be built connecting their two properties, Henry's house and Elizabeth's new home. So you can grow things together," Jenny explains, "without having to choose whose garden to work in. And maybe," Tommy adds with a grin, "so Grandpa doesn't have to pretend he's just stopping by every morning to check on the roses." Henry looks at their children, his and hers, now simply theirs, and sees Margaret and Thomas in their faces, in their capacity for love and understanding. Elizabeth finally pulls out the watch box. "I was saving this for later, but..." She hands it to Henry. "Some moments deserve to be marked in time." Henry opens it, recognizes the model immediately. "Just like the one you wore when we first fell in love," she finishes. "I thought it was time to start marking our hours together again." He fastens it on his wrist, the familiar weight of it carrying both memory and promise. Around them, their family and friends celebrate, but for a moment, they're alone in the crowd, connected by the steady tick of a vintage watch and 50 years of life lived to reach this point. "I have something for you too," Henry says, reaching into his jacket. He pulls out a small box containing a pair of pearl earrings, not the same ones from prom. "Those are yours to keep, but maybe for new memories." The pearls catch the twinkling lights as Elizabeth puts them on, their soft glow matching the joy in her eyes. In the background, Sarah nudges James, who starts the music. Can't help falling in love, just like at prom, just like at the harvest dance. "May I?" Henry asks, extending his hand. They dance slowly, their blended family watching with happy tears and knowing smiles. The watch marks each precious moment. The pearls glow with reflected light and two hearts beat in time, grateful for flat tires and rainy days and all the twists of fate that bring love home again. The autumn sun paints the country road in familiar shades of gold as Henry's truck slows to a stop. The spot hasn't changed. Same bend in the road, same maple trees now dropping their leaves in lazy spirals. "Hard to believe it's been a year," Elizabeth says, stepping out of the passenger side. Her pearl earrings catch the light, matching the silver in her hair. Henry retrieves something from the truck bed, the old tire mounted on a wooden stand, polished to a shine. At first their children had laughed when he kept it, but they understood. Some things are worth preserving. "Right here," he says, setting the tire down for a moment. "You were standing right here when I saw your eyes again." Elizabeth touches his hand, the gold band on her finger still new enough to surprise them both sometimes. They'd kept it simple, a quiet ceremony in the garden. Last month, surrounded by blooming roses and their growing family. "Sarah says we should put the tire in the new greenhouse," Elizabeth muses, "a reminder of new beginnings. And second chances," Henry adds, checking his anniversary watch, "the one that keeps perfect time despite its age, just like their love." The sound of approaching cars breaks their reverie. Right on schedule, their family arrives. Michael and Jenny with Tommy, James with his camera ready, Sarah holding her newborn daughter Elizabeth Margaret, named for both grandmothers. Emma bounds out first, already reaching for her grandfather's hand. "Is this really where it happened?" she asks. "Where you found each other again?" "Right here," Elizabeth confirms. Grandpa stopped to help with a flat tire, and the rest is history, Emma finishes, proud of knowing their story by heart. Henry picks up the tire, and they all walk together to the small clearing they'd discovered just off the road. A perfect spot for what they've planned. James sets up his camera while Michael and Tommy help Henry position the tire. They've created a small memorial garden here, a place where travelers can rest and flowers can bloom. The tire will stand as its centerpiece, mounted on its stand with a simple plaque. "Love finds its way home." "Mom," Sarah calls softly, "would you like to hold your namesake?" Elizabeth takes the sleeping baby, marveling at how life unfolds in circles. Behind her, Henry helps Emma plant bulbs around the tire's base, daffodils and tulips that will surprise spring travelers with their beauty. "Someone else might break down here," Emma suggests, "and find love too." "Maybe," Henry says, brushing soil from his hands, "or maybe they'll just find hope. Sometimes that's even better." They gather for James's photo, 3 generations framed. By autumn trees, the tire standing witness to their joy. Jenny spreads a picnic blanket, Tommy hands out sandwiches from maize, and Sarah nurses the baby, while Michael tells stories about his father's auto shop adventures. Elizabeth leans against Henry's shoulder, watching their family, feeling the steady tick of his watch against her arm. "Thank you," she whispers. "For what? For stopping that day, for carrying your tools, for remembering my eyes." Henry turns to face her, and there it is, that same look that stopped time on a rainy afternoon 1 year ago. "Thank you for getting a flat tire in exactly the right place, at exactly the right time." The sun begins its slow descent, painting the sky in colors only autumn knows. Their family packs up the picnic, leaving the tire garden to its quiet purpose. Soon others will find this spot, read the plaque, maybe rest a while, and think about love's timing. "Ready to go home?" Henry asks, offering his hand. Elizabeth takes it, feeling the strength of 50 years flow between them. "Home," she agrees. "The long way." They drive back slowly, following their family's cars through the gathering dusk. The old tire stands behind them, a sentinel to second. Chances while ahead the road stretches on, not an ending, but a continuation of a love story that took the scenic route to forever.